Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Snapdown Wrestling, produced by Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. I'm Tommy Lynch. I'm your host. Past couple of weeks, we've been going over a lot of things with the wrestling world. What's going on? What's happening? We've been covering mostly what's going on in Rhode Island. We touched on college as well. We're wondering if we're going to have a season or not. Today was supposed to be the start of the winter season. We were supposed to have our first wrestling practice today. We did not. In fact, today, Rhode Island went into a 2-week pause. And that means basically, I guess, everybody should really tidy up, wear their masks. And some businesses are shutting down. Bars are definitely shutting down, recreational facilities. So definitely no wrestling practice is going on. But we talked about some high-risk sports, moderate-risk sports, why wrestling is high risk or not. But again, today we were supposed to start. The kids are hurting. I heard from my wrestling team. Coach, we wish we were at practice. We want to get going. This is horrible. And all I can say to that is, hey, listen, we're on the 2-week pause. There's nothing we can do about it. What we got to do is hang in there, make sure we're wearing our masks, and make sure that we're doing our social distancing, everything that we can as individuals to comply with what the governor is saying that we need to do to get those numbers down. And we're going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I urge that everybody else does it. And we plan on having a season. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We plan on having a season. May not be in winter season traditionally. They got the moderate sports that can't start till December 13th. But we do plan on having the season possibly in the spring. I can't promise anything. Nothing's in stone right now. Everything's up in the air. A vaccine's on the way. All sorts of stuff happening. But today, I'm super excited to have an amazing guest with us today. Jared Opfer is on the show tonight. And Jared is a Ohio wrestling legend. He is so many accomplishments. Let's start with a 4-time state champ, Ohio state champ, 4-time SBC champion, a 4-time sectional champion, 3-time district champion, and a career record of 211-4. Think about that, guys. Ohio, big state, great wrestling state, a lot of competition, 211-4 and 27 tournament career wins. Great to have him on the show. Jared, wrestler from St. Mary's High School. It was St. Mary's Central Catholic High School. Jared, are you there? Good to have you on the show, bud.
Hey, thanks, Coach. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for coming on and for taking the time. Jared's also now the director of the OAC. The OAC is the Ohio Athletic Committee, and that's for the kids. That's for the middle school, if I'm correct. The youth program, basically.
Yep. Middle school and youth. And we do state tournaments here in Ohio for middle school and youth. 20 plus years for the junior high, and it's above 15 for the youth. And then we do the state duels, and we have a various 80 to 90 tournaments a year we kind of have under our wing. So
80 to 90 tournaments a year. That's throughout the whole year.
Yeah, just the state. Actually, just November to March for the most part. So yeah. So
November to March.
Yeah. And then I coach at back in my alma mater, Sandusky St. Mary's. So head coach there with some brothers and some old alum from there as well. It's very, very small school. So
really, right? Okay.
Yeah. It's like 70
Ohio.
Yep, only like Cedar Point, right there here in Cedar Point. Real small school, about under 100 boys in the high school. Always been a small school, just one of those things. And it's a good program. So
big things come in small packages. Happy holidays.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, with a record like that, and not only just you. I mean, you mentioned that you have some brothers that were also wrestlers that were very decorated. What did their trophy shelf look like? Did you have room for all the trophies in that house?
Yeah, that was kind of back in our in the school's heyday, I guess, for the wrestling program at school. We were all 4-time state placers. Went on to Kent State. I think there was like 10 state finals appearances by us. Like I said, we placed all every year. All had over 200 wins. So small school. We have 3 divisions here in Ohio. We're the small school, and we're on the small end of the small schools. But the program, Coach Roth and Coach Heemstra, and there's several others had the program rolling. From I think from '92 to 2007. They're outside of the top 5 once, and they took 9th, I believe, in that 20 plus year span. And they just had it rolling, and the kids played multiple sports. They were tough in football as well. I think a Final Four football appearance in there as well. But it's a small school, one of those things, and we're plugging away right now, not what it used to be, but there's Ohio's really competitive. But getting back to the brothers, like I said, they all went down to Kent State, and we had some great memories there, and just a good group of guys. My one brother lives down the street. He helps coach. The third oldest, he helps coach. He has a little boy, and then the youngest, he's still here in Ohio and involved in helping out various places. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome to give back. You come through the program to come back and give back, especially to the youth. The youth program, the elementary school, and the middle school program to mold them at that level is really commendable on your part, because you could easily, I would think, go in and get a university job or a college position, but it all starts with the kids, and I have that same mentality and think that that's absolutely amazing that you can do that, run that many tournaments. I mean, you're a busy guy. Is this something that, is this a full-time job? It would have to be.
Yep. Yeah. Me and another guy, and it's a small organization, but it's fun. You get to be around wrestling people, and it's fun. These events we put on, there's a lot of hands. It's just not me. It's just not one person. It's not a small group. A lot of people that go into putting these tournaments on, and we continuously try to make them better each year. So.
Sure. How many years have you been the director?
I've been back involved. I've been involved since I think 2009. So that was my first year involved with the OAC. So a little story how it started then. Like I said, our program at St. Mary's did a awesome job. The coaches, that group they had coming up. Let's go back to the mid '80s. They started a youth program. There was nothing in the area, in the Sandusky area, it's a small town. So they started a youth wrestling program. It was the biggest youth tournament in the area. Kids from Cleveland, Toledo coming in. And, we're traveling the country like, most people do these tournaments. And we were running our own tournaments at the high school. And they're like, we could, there's nothing between our conference and, the national events. And like, we could put on a tournament. We know what we're doing. They had a great support system. So late '90s, they thought about it, and 1999, they jumped on board, and they had 4 qualifying tournaments to the junior high state tournament, and they had all the big coaches that are involved. Like I said, Ohio, as most people know, is pretty deep. Those from Ohio know the name Brian Brakeman. They had him involved, talking it up and being part of the media and promoting it, and so they kind of had that vision, in the '90s, seeing these tournaments, how they ran, and jumping in and helping. Traveling the country and helping run tournaments. And so they actually started. So it was actually my high school coaches that started it back in '99. And, went to Kent State, I was in the real world for a little bit, and then get my master's. And, it just grew beyond that volunteer base, in 10 years, it just kept growing and growing. They're like, at that time, they had one employee. It was my high school coach. And they're like, it was just growing so big. So that's when they kind of brought me on. And then since then we've, I don't know how, we've continued to grow. And so that's kind of what was the thought process back in the '90s. There was nothing from, you had these, top level talent in Ohio, and there's nothing to, wrestling, whether you're from Cincinnati or Cleveland or Toledo, nothing, you had to go to national tournaments to wrestle each other sometimes. So, so here it is, 20 something years later, and it's still, so putting kids on the map nationally, and even an experience for those mediocre or mid-level kids are still growing. To walk in a big arena and have that experience. So,
Do you have a lot of clubs that do traveling outside of the season after March? Do you have a lot of clubs that take kids all over wrestling, collegiate, folk style, or do you have a freestyle Greco team as well? How does all that work? How do you put that together?
Yeah. We have some awesome clubs. That's what, I was talking to someone last week about explaining what the OAC is. It's the coaches here in Ohio are amazing. The Burnett's, Scotty and Eric Burnett, and obviously the St. Ed's and the Grahams and all these clubs across Ohio. Now you have some of these Northern Ohio guys, Colin Palmer, Logan Stieber down in Columbus. There's too many to mention, but there's all these guys across the state that are, back involved in the sport. They could be doing other things with their time, but they're back involved in the sport. And that just is what makes Ohio, so great, so they're, training year round, like I said, Guy Seiko up at, St. Ed's in Defense Soap, he's taking teams every weekend. We just had middle school national duels up here in Toledo. It's a big tournament. For the middle school level, we work with them, to help put that on. They drive it, but we just kind of, here's, mats, here's clots, things like that. So, but the club scene here in Ohio is awesome, and it's only getting bigger and better. Like I said, it's just, more people getting involved, and it's a strong group of coaches. So
nice. How strong would you say the turnout is on the youth level? Let's say one of your big tournaments, your big state tournaments. How many wrestlers you having in those tournaments?
So at the youth level, so we have last year we actually had was the first year for it. We had 16 sectionals that paired down to 8 districts that then went into the state tournament. Unfortunately, in Ohio last year, we weren't able to have any of our state tournaments. We were very late compared to most states. So here in Ohio, we had the high school state second week in March, and then we have our junior high the third, and then our youth the fourth. So, I was actually, like I said, a coach. We were getting in the van to head down to the state tournament, and we got the call canceled. So we were literally getting in the car, getting going there, and then from there, obviously, as everybody knows, things started canceling. But to get back to your question, it's over 3,000 kids that enter the sectionals. Then that feeds down to the districts. Then we have about 1,200 at the state for the youth tournament. That does not include, we also have a novice state tournament here in Ohio that's ran by a group out of Delta up near Toledo. And they sell out every year, over 800 kids. And that's just, first and second year wrestlers, that don't have OAC state experience. So that's really an awesome experience for those kids to get some mat time in like a big setting, other than the high school gym that's up in Toledo at the Seagate Center last couple of years. And that group runs an awesome event. So they kind of get, the kids and parents kind of get their feet wet through the novice state, and then they kind of move on to the OAC. And it's just a good, stepping stone for these coaches and parents kind of getting acclimated to the sport.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That's a great idea. So these kids aren't going out there and they're, beginners and wrestling, expert level
Right.
kids going out there and of all about 14 seconds and then just dragging themselves off the mat. They actually get to compete on that stage and go to the second, third period, get pins, have real competitive matches on their level. That's great. Now, tournaments that size, I talked to you earlier about being able to turn over the tournament. How do you do it? Because I know that you have some tournaments where kids are in and out in 4 or 5 hours or 4 hours, where here in Rhode Island, sometimes the tournaments are 8 hours.
Yeah. It just depends really, some of these smaller tournaments we have, we run the novice or the beginner in the morning. And, we have some, the tournaments, so in the AM, okay, it's the beginner set. Like you said, it's very important because now they're getting matched up with those kids that are, experience level, and kids progress at different rates. You might not be competitive today, but that's the kid you're going to need in high school to be a training partner, right? Wrestling's not, not track or swimming, right? You need a partner. You can't race the clock, right? You have to have that partner. And if these kids are sticking with it, just because they're not, most athletic or, the strongest at, 8 years old, it just takes some time to progress. So mornings at some of these tournaments, the novice in the AM and then the experience in the afternoon. And then same thing with our, our sectionals and districts. we pair it up. So, whether it's, the 6U and the 10U are in the AM, and then, the 8U and the 12U in the afternoon. That way, coaches know if they've got a big team, they're going to be there all day. But that way, parents are in and out if they just have one kid. And, and we have it, we got some good people involved. There's, we've, 10 plus years ago, we got involved with Doug Sikora, kind of a track wrestling system before track kind of got this way. So it was all electronic bouts, and he had the math down where, okay, you bring the second session in as these kids are coming back, as you get to the consi semis and you start going fast, right? Well, he knew the math on how to get those kids, where to put that in. And, now he does a lot of our tournaments still, and we have people running track wrestling and that was the key, and then you had parents able to follow along at home, and, we had all that, the efficiency of these tournaments that, kind of didn't turn people away, and just getting the feedback from the, the parents and the officials of, okay, what can we do better? How can we make weigh-ins better? And so we've done a lot of different things, but that's the piece is you don't want to run, you got a 400 kid tournament. You don't want all 400 there at once. What's that? You got more people yelling, they're screaming louder, and now, okay, let's take 200, put them in the AM, stagger the sessions. So you can do a later weigh-in, for the afternoon guys, so they don't got to be sitting around all day. The flip side of that, some people, I've heard say, well, it takes away the team atmosphere, because now back in the day, you go and you weigh in, then you go out to breakfast and you come back and wrestle. But, I think from an overall big picture, it's kind of nice because now you're not sitting in a gym all day.
Right. That's big. That's important. Now, we here in Rhode Island, we're a growing wrestling community. You may not think so. Small state. Oh, I got a Rhode Island guy. Not the case anymore. We have tough, competitive wrestlers, some that are going to Division I schools now as well, and that travel all over the country to these big tournaments, looking for these tournaments. They have the means, they have the wherewithal. We have the club system that can provide that now. What would be the best website for us to go on to hook up and see what's going on in Ohio as far as tournaments?
If you go to our website, ohioathletics.com, just type that in, and we have a tournament page. Also some of our results are on oec.tv. That's our YouTube page, and we just launched a Rockfin channel too. But most of our tournaments are just Ohio based, but we are getting into we're out of here at Sandusky, like I said, and Cedar Point just put a new facility, so we're looking at maybe bringing some people in summertime, doing some duels, things like that. Kids get passes to the park and things like that. But, ohioathletics.com, what we have going on. So
awesome. Well, definitely keep Rhode Island in mind. We're going to take a short break here, and then we're going to come back and talk more wrestling with Ohio wrestling legend, Jared Opfer. We're also going to be doing our referee segment tonight, our ref's rule segment. And we have another family dynasty member. We have Rob Smith waiting in our lounge to talk about some rules and what's going on this year with referees and the season and his dynasty and family and all that fun stuff. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Thanks, Jared. All right, welcome back. We're talking with Jared Opfer. Jared, thanks again for being on the show. Good to see you. How'd your Thanksgiving go? To get off subject a little bit.
No, it was great. No, it was very good. Your family time, very small compared to usual, but it was that much more special, with everything going on. So I'm pretty blessed. I can't complain.
It
How
was
about
tough.
yourself?
It was tough for me. I got to be honest with you because I'm used to making this big meal and the family comes over and all that. And this year we just couldn't do that,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But that didn't stop me from making the same amount of food. So
Nice, nice.
I,
Yeah.
I've literally been eating Thanksgiving dinner for like breakfast, lunch,
Yeah.
and dinner. I even had to make turkey Thanksgiving pizzas. And
There you go.
next week, post that recipe. But
You got to get creative with it, right?
yeah,
I'm same boat, same boat. We used to grow up, like I said, we talked earlier. My brothers, my mom and dad have big families, and we used to have them over to our house, and we'd have tables upon tables. And I think the most we had one year was 80 people. So obviously this year looked a little different, but it's
right.
yeah, getting creative with the leftovers. Got to do that.
For sure. Big family with us as well. 35, 40 people, a lot of people to feed, but I'm eating most of it now myself. But already gained 8 pounds. So I don't know. I
I'm
could
not stepping on the scale for another week.
I could probably cut down a little bit. It may take me. I used to be able to lose 8 pounds in about a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes like 4 days, but now it's coming off a little slower. So it's probably going to take me till Christmas to lose that, if I can lose that
Right.
at all. Speaking of cutting weight, that was a big problem back in the day. If you recall, I mean, you graduated in 1990. 99, excuse me. So you guys were still big time cutting weight back then. I was, dressing up with the silver space suit and the rubber suits and
Right.
going in saunas and losing all this crazy weight. But nowadays they don't do that.
Right.
They don't allow you to do that.
Right. And the hydration, everything. Yeah. Lots of change, science is catching up.
Yeah. So basically cutting weight is really obsolete. As far as I'm concerned, which had to happen. And they do that by doing a skin fold test and a hydration test at the beginning of the season. Here in Rhode Island, I'm imagining, that you guys do that too. That's a nationwide thing that people have to abide by, and you can't get to a certain weight for a certain number of days or a certain number of weeks. So what do you think is the best way to go about that? Get your test as early as possible. As soon as they say, hey, you can go get your team tested, have your team ready for that, kind of have them down to the lowest possible weight already safely using different types of nutritional blueprints and diets that are out there now that can help us mathematically develop the formula to do it safely and effectively and then maintain it as well. What's your thoughts on that as far as when should you get that test?
Yeah, I got a lot of different thoughts on this. Obviously, like you said, back then it was a little different. Cutting weight, it was kind of the norm. And now, as a coach and as a part of the OAC, it's changed. Right? We know a lot more now than we did 20 years ago. One thing I try to communicate with my wrestlers and our wrestlers, they kind of know we're going to do it right before, from the coaching standpoint, right before the holiday, right before Thanksgiving, so we're reminding them, hey, we're going to do the hydration test. Here's when we're doing it, and start watching what you're eating. If you're playing football, it doesn't mean you can't eat. Just eat healthy, right? It's supposed to be optimal weight. So that's what it is. And obviously we have some kids that are more serious than others, and others, some just wrestle what they weigh. My thought, obviously with that, I don't want to, I've been talking to coaches across the state. I don't. The hydration is great, but let's keep on researching how we can make that better too, right? I don't want that to be okay. That's the standard for the country, right? If we can make that better somehow, let's keep digging. From the OAC side of it, since we're dealing with youth athletes, we do not do the skin fold. It just there's so many kids, and it just having that test being done, the tracking of that. So what we changed a few years ago. This is probably at least probably 6-8 years ago. We actually, once they register for a weight, it used to be they could show up and cut weight, just like, I don't know how it is out there, but how it used to, could show up and you could run till weigh-in started, or whatever it may, or while weigh-in started, right? So now at our events, what we have is if you register for 80 pounds, right, and we cut off registration, I think 36 hours for our district tournaments. You have to make 80 pounds. Okay. So your dad's not, all right, let's try to, cut him down to the lower weight. You show up, you're not running you can't, you use a restroom. Once you commit to weigh-ins, you got to make 80 pounds. You can't go up a weight class, you know what I mean? Cause then parents, that would provide the incentive of, okay, let's put him down to 75 and see if he can make it. If he can't, now he's at 80. So that's one thing we've done. We have a way out. We do a allowance for the state tournament, but then they also have a way out. So they get 2 pounds for the state tournament, and then a pound for the way out on Sunday. So they got to weigh in Friday night for our state tournament, and then by Sunday they have to weigh out. So they got to for new parents it's kind of new, but it's up to the coach to kind of communicate. Okay, here's the process. We want whoever wrestle what they optimal weight. We don't want them cutting them down and having to wrestle all weekend at that unhealthy weight.
Right. And we do the same thing here. Like, you're registered, certain weight class, you show up. First of all, you're not running the gym before you hit the scale. You need to come scale ready. I'm a head coach. I'm the head coach at Cranston High School West.
Okay.
And you need to come scale ready. And on. I don't believe in spitting on the bus and running.
Do you guys do that at the youth level too? Do you guys is your youth tournaments that way too, or how's the youth structured? Yeah,
it's pretty much the same way. What you register at, you have to weigh, and once you hit that scale, I mean, that's it. You cannot get off the scale, suit up like we used to, run around the gym, and you got 15 kids running all over the school, trying to go to the bathroom, trying to do whatever to make this the weight, and it's just not how it is.
That's key, because that's keeping those kids involved in the sport. That's the last thing an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid wants to do is go run, right? Because dad wants to put them in a lighter weight. So hopefully that in the long term of things, it's helping kids stay with the sport.
It is. It definitely is. It can definitely deter you from the sport because let's face it. I mean, it wasn't fun. I did it. I shouldn't have done it.
Right.
As it turned out, I wrestled kids in New England's practice once after the state championship was over, and I was beating kids that were the next weight class and then the next weight class above that were that weight class state champion. So I'm like, what am I doing here? Why did I put myself through that torture when it's not about your weight? It's about strength and skill. And when you do cut weight like that, you lose a heck of a lot of that strength.
Right. And then injuries, concussions, everything. I talked with Coach Beechler at Ohio Northern. He was one of the guys behind that whole hydration OPC process for high school and college athletes. I forget what episode of my Wrestling Philosophy podcast, but he's like, why were we doing this? We were all cutting 10, 20 pounds, and then we were just bulking up after weigh-ins, and we were weighed the same, but then we'd go through torture just to get down. Why were we doing that? Right. And, now it's, a little more evened out, and, it kind of makes more sense. So.
Yeah. And it was amazing because, you were so sucked out back in the day that after you weighed in, you'd have your Gatorade, you'd eat. And by the end of the night, you step on the scale, you're 5 to 6 pounds heavier just because you're like a sponge at that point.
Right.
And then draining all the water. And it's just, I found I lost a lot of strength, and it was definitely unhealthy to do it that way. So are you, before I get into that, I'm going to say that we are not wrestling right now. As I said before, we are on hold. We're on a pause. Winter sports, the ones that are moderate risk, like basketball, they cannot do anything till mid-December. We are considered high risk, which
high contact. They kind of correlate that too. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. As well as football, as well as competitive cheerleading, all these things. And in my opinion, I don't really think that we are the highest risk sport, and basketball is moderate. Nothing against basketball. I want to see basketball. I want to see all the sports because the kids need it.
Right.
But it's not the highest risk. Okay. So if I'm playing basketball, and again, nothing against basketball, I'm bumping up against you, and I got 5 other guys that I'm intermingling with and touching a ball that 5 other guys are touching, that seems like high risk to me. Oh, wait, there's substitutes that are going to come in too. So
Right.
there's more people. Try the contact tracing on that. With wrestling, let's call it a dual meet. You're with one person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're wiping down with the defense wipes before you step onto the mat, and then wiping down after. By the way, the mat is sanitized as well. So
Right.
this to me sounds, and I'm not
Right.
forgive me for being biased, but I mean, this sounds like a safe situation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If it's about the fans, well, then guess what? We'll live stream the event,
Right.
and it'll just be just like the pro sports with the athletes and the refs and the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But there's many different things that we can do. What's your thoughts on this? But we're not wrestling. You guys are. So what's going on
at this current moment? Yeah, at this current moment, Ohio is what you say. His message is as is. Let's move on. Leaving up the school and the county, health department. So right now, as a coach, we're taking it a day by day. That's what I tell my kids. That right now we get the opportunity. We get to compete right now. I know some Toledo schools are shut down for a couple of weeks. Some Columbus schools are shut down. So I'm just from my coaching position. That's what I'm that's what I'm saying. From my OAC position, we just had a football. We actually do a youth football, and we do cheer as well. And I think I'm with you on the football thing. You got 11-11, and you have the substitutes, and they're touching each other, right? It might be in that short 20-second span, but they're in a game for how many minutes, right? Wrestling, it could be 1-on-1, and it could be a 30-second match with a pin, or a 6-8 minute match. And we already have protocols in place with skin checks and things like that. So we know what it takes to, I guess, be clean and healthy, and in those lines. I actually know, I hear football teams all the time with turf have skin infections because they're not looking at skin and equipment and cleaning it like we do with the defense products. And I think it's just us as wrestlers to educate these administrators what we are doing, what we're doing as coaches, what we're doing as, tournament directors, as a wrestler, because a lot of administrators don't know wrestling. They don't know anything about how wrestling works. And it's really up to us to kind of, here's what we're doing. Here's our process. Here's our protocols. And it's up to us. We see these schools that thrive in, the scholastic seasons that, their administrators understand wrestling. And so they provide them opportunities and, the options to do extra things. And then, these programs that don't get the backing. And so it's up to us to educate, these administrators what we're doing. But right now, Ohio, like I said, we're on a almost a day-to-day basis with the county levels and what the county health departments are saying. Right now we have a tournament here in Ohio. OEC is having a tournament. On the 13th of December, we plan for it at the Cedar Point Sports Center. It's a huge facility, 10 courts, huge facility. We're going to put 6 mats down. As of right now, that's the plan. And then fans are going to go upstairs and watch from upstairs. They have a track that goes around so they can socially distance. Defense soap duels is going to be there the weekend after. That way the spectators are away from, they're one spectator per wrestler, you know what I mean? And then, the coaches and the wrestlers on the floor. As of right now, that's the plan. So we'll see, taking it a step at a time. Like I said, we were bummed last year. We didn't get to finish our season. So hopefully these kids can get something, this coming season.
Right. That's all you can do is take it one step at a time. Mm-hmm. Fingers crossed, put all the safety protocols in place, and wrestle. Okay. And make sure that you're having these kids just take that extra step to do that cleaning and wearing your masks and, sticking to that one single partner in practice or the pods of 4,
right.
And just doing it that way. And I think that it could be safe. The contact tracing certainly would be fairly easy to do because, like we talked about that you're only wrestling that one person. So right now I can almost hear the suitcases closing of the wrestlers of Rhode Island getting ready to move to Ohio. So you might have some good wrestlers coming your way from Rhode Island. And it's funny, and I'm joking, of course, but something? Some parents might say, hey, let's go to a state and move to a state that has wrestling as of right now. And the only thing that really probably that would hold someone back is because nothing's guaranteed. Like you said, it's a day by day week by week basis, looking at the numbers and all that. But and that's great to hear that wrestling's still going on. I'm definitely jealous. Today was a very hard day for me. Looking at the clock, being wrestling practice should be starting right now, and it's hard. It's hurtful for me, for the coaches in Rhode Island and the other states that are not doing it right now, and it's hurtful for the kids, not only just for their season, but emotionally, mentally, and physically, because they're not getting to get all of that energy out. What are they doing now? The gyms are even closed down. So what are they doing if they don't have a gym at their house? Well, I can tell you they're probably eating leftover Thanksgiving dinner and playing video games and watching YouTube.
Right. Right. They don't have enough chance to be, when they're, what they're used to and being healthy of working out. Right.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, it's great to hear, like I said, that's going on, and great to talk with you. I'm going to have to go to another break right about now. And I know that we got Rob Smith waiting in the lounge, and he's going to fill us in on some of the rules, that are kind of very confusing. A lot of people are confused about, like, out of bounds, and I went over that a little bit last week, but I do want to hit on it again because it's something that makes or breaks a match. If a ref gets it wrong, and as a coach that was totally in, but he's an older ref and didn't really get the new rules or doesn't apply them, and he's just old school, and you're over there screaming your head off, and now you get the card, now you're out of the gym, and you were right all along. So I just like to have Rob come in and talk a little bit about that and some of the things going on with the refs here in Rhode Island. So hang tight, Jared. Once again, great talking to you. And we're going to cut to a break, and we'll be back in just a minute. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, welcome back to Snapdown Wrestling. I am the host, Tommy Lynch, and we are on with Jared Opfer, and he's in Ohio. We are in Rhode Island. Actually, speaking of which, right now we have rain, floods going on outside. I can hear the rain and the wind, 50-mile-an-hour gusts. So if we cut out and lose this show, it would be because of that. So
we have snow going on here, but we're supposed to get 6 to 12 inches over the next day and a half. So
really,
same thing going on here. First snow of the year here in Ohio. It was 60 degrees 2 days ago. So
right, really weird with the weather, and we have a ton of outages right now. So a lot of people without power right now, and again, just fingers crossed with that, we're not going to lose power. I do have a great generator, so if we do, I'm still not going to lose the rest of that Thanksgiving dinner. I know that you were worried about that. You do not want me to lose that Thanksgiving dinner. But without further ado, I want to talk about our next guests in Refs Rule. And this guy is also part of a dynasty like yourself, Jared. This is Rob Smith. He's a 3-time Rhode Island state champion, 1-time New England champion, and he coached at Coventry High School for 6 years, and he's been a referee for 27 years. Now, as I said, he comes from part of a dynasty. His brother David was also a beast as well, and Dave won 2 state titles, 3 New England championships, and placed 3rd his junior year. So incredible. Now, his brother Danny, who's the youngest of the 3, was amazing. And I wrestled with Danny. He graduated in 1989. He was a 4-time state, 4-time New England champ, undefeated, 104-0.
Wow.
In high school. Went on to wrestle for BU. But just amazing family. The Smiths are staple. Not to mention their father was the coach, Bob Smith with Dick McGarian. You couldn't ask for 2 better coaches, 2 better mentors, 2 better human beings. Both of them really, really great guys, really encouraging. And Rob, a product of that. Really great guy, really smart guy, and a good friend of mine. Rob, how you doing, bud?
Pretty good. You guys, I saw some of your talk already. Had little technical difficulties getting on, but I figured it out sooner or later.
I'm glad. I was getting worried. I'm like, I thought Rob was in the lounge. I thought I saw him there, and then he was gone. So glad to have you on our segment of Refs Rule. Great ref. Been reffing for 27 years. I had Joey Esposito on last week in Refs Rule. Also pretty much the same amount of time, 27, 28 years. You guys kind of came on together. Known you guys forever since I was wrestling in the youth program, and coming to the matches and seeing you, wrestle at Coventry High School, which in and of itself is an amazing dynasty. I mean, I think between 81 and you won 17 straight state championships all the way up from 81 to 1997-98 season, which was absolutely amazing. So to see Rob wrestle, and I'm just a little kid in the youth program, he was like a wrestling god to me. So was Dave, and so was Danny when I got to wrestle with him. But Rob, you were part of the start of that whole dynasty in 81, 82. Am I correct?
Yes, that was my sophomore year.
That was your sophomore year. Yeah, that's quite a run. And there were some great teams. So for Coventry to be able to hold on and win it every year for 17 years was just absolutely amazing. And a lot of that is because of the Smith family. As I said, you guys put a lot into it.
Mr. Megarian.
And Mr. Megarian. Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I say the Smith family, I also encompass him in that, because to me, you guys are like one big family for sure.
Right.
And what an incredible wrestling style that came out of Coventry, and it's still happening. So congratulations on all of that. I wanted to go over some of the out of bounds stuff, and hopefully my producer has the out of bounds figures ready so that we can take a look at some of the rules that have been troubling people on what's right, what's inbounds, what's out of bounds. So we're going to go over that. What can you say about out of bounds on your feet? Now, this has changed a lot because they're trying to promote the action as much as possible. So if you can see there, we got figure 1 through figure 6.
Yeah. So basically, most of the stuff is the biggest thing is the referees have to learn that it used to be if you had 2 points out of bounds, you were out of bounds. Now it's as long as you keep 2 points in bounds of either wrestler. So it could be 1 point, 1 foot in, and the line is still considered in. So you got to remember that. And so if you look at those figures, figure 1, the one wrestler's got 2 legs in, the other guy's got 2 legs out, so they're still in bounds. Whereas the old rules, he actually would have been out of bounds.
Right.
And then figure 2, basically looking at that, you got 1 foot in each guy, and that's like I said, basically all you have to really worry about is maintaining 2 points supporting points inbounds. When you're on your feet, those are your supporting points. And the biggest thing that a lot of people don't remember is that the line is actually inbounds, and that causes their problems. A lot of them say, "Oh, he's out of bounds." Now, the line has been changed so it's inbounds. And that's it's only been probably about 5 to 7 years, but we get a lot of older coaches who just look at, they don't update their mentality and haven't changed what they think is out of bounds. And so that's one of the biggest problems we have as officials is, you got to remember, and I think that's one of the things you have to learn to deal with when you deal with coaches is come through and develop where you explain it to them so that even if they've not kept up with it, when you explain the rule to them, then they understand it and you can move forward.
For sure.
That's
Yeah,
one of the
absolutely.
things that a lot of the officials, especially the younger officials, they're like, this guy should know the rule book. Well, they don't all know the rules. I would say, even when I was coaching, I would say there was probably maybe 50% of the coaches knew the rules well. And then the rest of them were just, they just be going by what they did when they were in high school, as far as
right.
the matches. But
For sure, really important to know the rules. And the biggest one is figure 5. I think that would be the biggest confusion for a coach or for a ref. As you can see in figure 5, the wrestler with his back towards the circle has his both feet on the line, which accounts for 2 points of his supporting points. I'm talking about the figure 5 and still in the neutral position, where the defensive wrestler in this position is totally out of bounds, way out of bounds. So if a coach wasn't up on the rules or a ref wasn't up on the rules, they call that out of bounds. And if the guy's coming in and backs in, or the defensive wrestler is circling in, that should still be continued, because a lot of times a takedown would start at that point. Now, that's on your feet. A lot of confusion also on the out of bounds. And if you look in here, you can see they're showing a headlock, 2 headlocks and a cradle as the figure frames 1 and 2, frame 2, frame 3. Now, go over this real quick, Rob. What's going on here on frame 1?
Okay. On frame 1, you've got basically the rule states that anytime you're on your back, that becomes your 2 supporting points. So a lot of people confuse that and say, well, he's got his feet still in, but from his hips up, which is his whole back, is out of bounds on that headlock. And therefore, the guy who is, totally out of bounds himself. Yep. So once that you get to the point where there's no back inbounds, then it becomes an out of bounds situation, even though his feet are still inside and his hips, are pretty much inside the line. So once his back goes over that exterior line, then you get, it becomes an out of bounds situation for that wrestler. And that's where a lot of the guys don't understand that, and they'll be like, oh, his feet are still in bounds. I can just pull that headlock as hard as I can, and don't adjust themselves to keep the guy inside the circle. Part of
right.
Back.
So if I'm seeing this as a coach and I'm jumping up in the air, yelling he's out of bounds, and the ref counting his 2 feet inbounds is looking and counting back points and then looking for the pin and then calls a fall. Okay. What can I do as a coach in that moment to say, hey, wait a minute, look, does that situation look familiar? Well, it should, because it just happened and it's out of bounds. So what would they do? What could I do? Would they say, well, too bad,
that's basically, you have to explain to him. And if the referee agrees that, the whole back was out of bounds, you can just show him with the rule book and just go through rule 5-15-2B and it spells out why the wrestler's out of bounds, and you go through that point, and then if he agrees, if he remembers, the situation being the same as what your feeling is, then he should change his ruling and not call that pin, or if he started inbounds and then went out of bounds and he got the 2-point near fall, or anything like that, then you can move forward from there. But I don't see a lot of the refs will take that and listen to what you have to say, and then either they're gonna have that replay in their head and they're gonna say, "Well, he's right. I made the bad call. His hips were out of his back was out of bounds, so he was therefore out of bounds because that's his supporting points once he's on his back." But I mean, as a good ref, you have to learn to accept when you make a mistake and not just repeat that mistake by going forward and forward over and again. I mean, if you make a mistake, you got to be man enough to say, "Okay, I made a mistake. Let's fix it." And that's one of the things that, as new refs, when I was training newer refs, we had a lot of issues with that because they don't want to make mistakes, but
they don't want to be wrong.
Want to correct that mistake once they do make a mistake. And I think that the best refs are the ones who, look at the situation and say, "Yep, this is correct." I mean, I've been caught with, Coach Gordon is one example I can think of when I was probably 3 or 4 years in refereeing, and his guy came down and he was, put his hands down, but he had his palm on the mat, and but he had his hand like a fist, and I went through and I called him for incorrect starting position, and Coach Gordon pulled me to the table and he said, "Nope. The rule says all he has to have is the heel of his hand down on the mat." And I was like, and he showed it to me in the rule book, and I had always, interpreted it as the palm being down, but he showed it to me that the heel of the hand was all that was needed. And guess what? I changed my call, and it was a pretty heated match already. And it was back when Coach Clinton was coaching. It was Cranston West and Cumberland. And put it this way, I got an earful from the Cranston West side because I changed the call, and because it was a point. I had given a point because the kid had already done two false shots, and so it was the third situation, and he was like, and when Coach Gordon brought me to the table, I had to fix it. And that's one of the things that a lot of
approach from the coaches also, plays a lot too. I mean, if you've got a coach who's flipping out and just being, unbecoming and just loud and screaming and calling you whatever, and rather than just approaching it the proper way, calm, and just showing, "Hey, this is the rule." Whatever, if you started in bounds, I saw, you got off the 2, for the back points, that's fine, but it doesn't continue outside, and it certainly doesn't go to the pin. So you come back and they start with the guy in red on bottom.
Right.
That would be the right thing to do.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of the, that's one of the things that you have to do as a referee. You have to, be able to replay it in your head and then apply the rule again. And,
that's where it's tough.
Perfect. And that is the toughest part, especially when you get, flurry of points and things like that. A lot of referees don't. I mean, one of the things I try to teach the new referees is to keep the sequence in their head. So if you got a guy takes a guy down, he does a half Nelson, puts a guy on his back, and then the guy, stands up, does a switch from his feet, does a reversal, and your scorekeeper doesn't keep up. That's what you have to be able to recreate in your head, as far as points go, and that's one of the toughest things to do, especially when you have a flurry of, kid throws himself. Throws one guy on the back, and then, he throws the other guy on his back, and you get that flurry of points where they're equally matched, and they kind of basically are scoring points left and right. And if your table doesn't keep up with you, you have a lot of issues with that as far as
that is, keeping up. And it's tough for the ref to keep up. It's tough for the coach to keep up. How do you do it? How do you keep that in your head? You get a flurry of two reversal, 2 back points. He gets out, reverses again, and within 15 seconds you have 6 points going one way and 4 points going the other way. You know, what's your secret to doing that? Do you have something that you do, or?
Basically the biggest thing I do with that, and this is the one thing I try to get the kids to do, is remember the sequence. Try to follow what your sequence was. So if the kid took him down with a double leg, remember that he took him down with a double leg. Keep those moves in your head, because that's how you're going to remember the sequence of events as far as recreating the match. And if you don't, if you just pay attention and you're like throwing points up left and right, and you expect your table to keep up, guess what? Trying to recreate it you get to a point where it becomes a very, very difficult situation. And I think
I'm going to have a sequence guy. I think I'm going to have another sequence guy outside the table for those flurries, because even myself, sometimes you're in the heat of the moment, and you're not really sure what happens. So if you have someone at the table and you have a sequence guy who's really on the ball and able to know and say, hey, okay, listen, this is exactly what happened. I think that's the route I'm going to go for this upcoming season. And then also, I think we should talk about replay in the future, if not for every, dual meet or tri meet or every tournament, but possibly for state semifinals and finals, and same thing with New England's. What do you think our possibility or the odds of us actually getting into a replay situation like college?
I don't think, I hope it does go that way, because I'll be honest with you. I mean, you see it all the time. Like if you're watching professional football, you see them change their calls and we have more bang calls than any, football game goes. I mean, we'll have 10 of those in a quick match, as far as those bang calls where you've got to recreate it in your head. And you've got to make the right call. And then you've got to be willing to also look back and say, okay, I screwed up. I didn't make the call correctly. I missed something, as far as that goes. And I think that's the biggest thing. We as officials have to be less worried about that. Oh, we made a mistake, and more worried about, okay, we got it right. And that's one of the things I like, as far as, when we do like bigger tournaments, when we have the assistant referees out there, and I think that's one of the other things that younger refs don't pick up, is they don't know how to use their assistant referee to the fullest extent. A lot of times, I mean, I've worked with, like, Joe Esposito is probably my favorite assistant referee, because he pays attention to one. And then the other thing that I like about him is that he's not afraid, if he disagrees with your call, to tell you. And a lot of the younger referees, they're like, nope, I'm not going to step on anybody's toes. I'm not going to try to make them look bad. When in actuality, if I make a mistake, I want to fix it as a referee. Right. I don't want it to be where, this continues on and I screw a kid out of a match. And that's why I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this could, make or break a match or a state championship, or it's really, really important. I see a lot of out of bounds calls being blown one way or another, and affecting the match. That's why I felt that it was important to bring this up. I'm not sure if we have time for one more figure with a person being on his back on the out of bounds circle. But can you start going through that again? It's the 2 points, and you see the bottom one. It looks like it has 1 point.
Right. The frame 3, you've got you've got his hip in bounds, and that's so. And he's on the out of bounds line with a near fall, and so the fall may be earned, and then he's supporting. As long as he keeps his hips in bounds, he's or in the line, on the line itself, then he's considered in bounds. And that's one of the things that a lot of referees are having trouble with the new change. Oh, if you're you're in another the other frame one. If you've got, if you go to the other picture there where you're on you fall on inbounds and out of bounds. If the guy's, if he's only got 1 foot in bounds, he's out of bounds. I don't care if wherever he is, his back is supporting points anyway, so he doesn't have anything that's in there. And then when the guy goes into that frame two, where he goes into that back bridge, that's probably the strongest one for the as far as knowing the rules. You have to pay attention, because once he goes up into that back bridge, his back is no longer the supporting point. Even though you can call back points, now his feet are his supporting point. So even though his head's out of bounds, he's got 1 point out, but he's got 2 points in. And that's where the rules have gotten really tight as far as that goes. I honestly wish we would go to a college rule where we'd use the cylinder, because it would make it so much easier to call inbounds and out of bounds, and there would be a lot more action on the edge, and you'd still stop it for safety. When a mat doesn't have enough room to, if you get the bigger guys where they're going to end up on the floor, you could still stop the match for safety. But by giving us that extra inches and making it so that as long as anything's in the cylinder, the match you don't want, I think that would be much more effective. And I just hope in the next couple of years, they give us as referees, we fill out surveys every year, and I've filled it out. The last 2 years, I filled out surveys saying that we should go to the college rule, because first of all, the kids want to wrestle that way anyways. They're wrestling freestyle that way. They're wrestling other forms of wrestling. So if you don't change high school, it's going to become outdated, and the kids are going to stop arguing calls, even though the rule hasn't changed. They're going to think, oh, this is a college rule, or this is a freestyle rule, and it must be my school, where a lot of the rules are not the same as high school to college. Or
it makes it tougher on officials too, right? If you have an official that's doing college and he's in high school, then they hurry. What are we doing here? We got 2 different rules. I was talking to officials last week on this, and even for a casual fan watching, they're at a high school match and they go to watch a college match. Like, wait a minute, why is the rules different, right? We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we're trying to promote wrestling, and now we're trying to teach different sets of rules. That's one thing we've talked about here in Ohio. It's like we got 4 sets of back points for college and 3 in high school. It's like, for these casual fans, it's kind of hard to keep promoting the sport if we're not on the same page for rules, right?
Right. And I think that's one of the things, you see now, even with like football and stuff like that. College football is going, they still have the 1 foot in, as far as, catch, but they've tried to make it more like a pro game. And I think that's what we have to do as, as wrestling officials and coaches and administrators. I think we've got to start to force the issue where we start to become more of a college game. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where the physicality of a college match is called like that. But I think that we've got to get to the point where we call the basic rules are pretty much the same.
The simple rules, right? Out of bounds, right?
Right. And everybody thinks that's a simple rule, but the way it's applied now, it's awful.
Right. It's making it tougher on officials, and I don't know about how it is out there, but it's especially with the current situation that COVID, Corona, whatever we call it. I'm concerned how many officials we're going to come, that want to step in the mat after this year if they're close and to be done, and now we got new officials that aren't ready, that aren't being mentored by these older officials, and they're trying to learn, okay, what's out of bounds, what's takedown, it could have a long impact on the sport.
Definitely, because like you said, if you don't have the older referees mentoring the younger ones, and I would say I was lucky in where, the mentors that I had when I came up. I had guys that were, college officials. I had three guys who were college officials who were, they stressed on, prepping yourself, getting yourself mentally ready, making sure you're in position. And they worked on all those things when I was a young ref. And the other thing they always talked about was, don't be afraid to make the call that's not the popular call.
Right. What I have a question after you. People, it's like you're saying, you need that mentor, right? It's like any profession. You need someone telling you where you're going right, where you're going wrong. How for a new official out there that's listening, how long did it take for you? Because I'm sure it wasn't the first time you stepped in a mat as official. You had it. When did the light bulb go off for you that I'm finally getting in my groove, because I'm sure it wasn't the first time, right?
Well, I was lucky in a lot of ways because
Okay.
back when I was in high school, we used to host a tournament all the time, one of the kids' tournaments, and
Okay.
one of the things as being doing the kids' tournament was our team, the guys had to take and become official. So my dad
Awesome.
being
Perfect.
the coach, he always threw us on, like when I was
So
a
you
freshman,
had
he was up there
experience right
refereeing.
away. That's awesome.
And so I had 3 or 4 years in high school before I even, and then I coached for 6 years. So I got, and my father was always big on, one of the things he did when he got out of college and became a coach and a teacher was that he took and he became an official as well. And he went to the officials meeting, he passed the test and became an official. And he said, I'm never going to get on the mat to referee as, because I'm a coach, but except for in kids tournaments, things like that. But he said the one good thing about it was you learn the rule book that way.
Mhm.
And by learning the rule book, he was always stressing, okay, this rule works for us, this one doesn't work for us, as far as us as a wrestler. And then, and as I would say, in all honesty, though, even when I started refereeing, I was still like, because I had
Ahead of
been
the
a
game,
coach for one thing, going,
Right.
it was in my head more as far as, oh, do I want to make this call or, and
Right.
I'd say probably the first 3 years, I would shade towards the easy side, so I wouldn't
Okay.
get when there was a real tough call, I'd be like, okay, I can see both sides, but I'm going to call it the way that, I think is going to be the more popular call. And
You had a lot
as
of
I got
experience
older,
from,
I got older, that was one of the things that changed.
I
I
think
got to the point where
to
I
get
didn't want to be their friend anymore. I wanted to make the right call.
right, and I think it's important, Rob, that we get the rule book into coaches' hands. As of right now, it's up to us to go out and go to Amazon or wherever and get our own rule book. Some of these coaches don't even know where to get the rule book, first off. And I think it's something that should be supplied to the coach so at least he can go through it. Imagine I go through the rule book, but some of these coaches do not. I've talked to some of them. They do not even have a rule book. So how are you going to coach? And the rules are constantly changing without having a rule book. Is there any way that you can get into somebody's ear and say, hey, listen, let's get these coaches' rule books, and maybe our job will be a little bit easier because everyone will know the rules?
Well, it's funny because one of the things we've talked about with the Interscholastic League, even for us, it used to be part of that was like almost like they gave us our rule books and they paid the fee for the rule books. And I'd say probably the last 10 years, maybe more, it's going to now the officials pay for their rule books, pay for, all the extra stuff, case books. And the biggest thing I would say was, as a coach, even more than the rule book is to read the case book, because the case book goes through a lot of different situations and it explains the little details that people miss when they read the rule. And that's one of the other things that I really stress with the younger refs as well is read your case book, but because the case book brings out not just the legalese of the rule, they bring up the spirit of the rule. And that's one thing that, most new referees, they're worried about that wording, everything, like they're almost going at it like a lawyer. And instead of looking at it and saying, well, this is what the spirit of the rule is, and apply it that way. And I think that's when some of the rules have gotten changed, because referees have said, this is what we're interpreting this. We're saying this is the spirit of the rule, at least from our perspective. And I think that's one of the good things about it.
All right, well, then give us the opportunity to do both. I mean, if we got to pay for it, we'll pay for it, but at least have it. Like, just have it, the case book, the rule book, and be like, okay, coaches, just like you pay your dues, do you have your book money? Yes,
Right.
Here's our book money, here's your books, so that we can have it, rather than just leaving it up to us and being like, hey, no one's even ever told me to go get my rule book. So
Right.
a lot of coaches don't go get it. Some of them don't mind paying for it, but someone just like, all right, well, where do I get it? Oh yeah, what are we having for dinner? And they totally, who cares? But it's got to be something
Yep.
that is across the board. But we're out of time. Unfortunately, I could sit here and talk to you guys all night. Two wrestling legends in Rob Smith and Jared Opfer. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And Jared also has a show that I want to be on. So let's talk this week and see if we can't make that happen. Really enjoyed having you guys. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And fingers crossed for Rhode Island to have wrestling season, because we need it, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we definitely do.
My pleasure.
And nice to meet you, Jared.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys. This has been Snapdown Wrestling. I'm your host, Tommy Lynch. We're here every Monday night at 9 o'clock. Thanks again, and have a great night.